Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Contemporary Issues. We are going to have a good discussion today, I hope, and your input on the immigration. We thought, what better time to start into this topic than this week when both Trump and Biden were at the border, and this is in the news in all ways. And so we're going to delve into this, try and understand a little of the issue, and have plenty of time for your comments and questions too. I am no expert in immigration, but I am a retired newspaper reporter who likes to present social issues and can hold up and talk about some of the good articles that have been in the news so much lately. Wall Street Journal this weekend has an article, New York Times has covered it, and we'll look at a little excerpt from the PBS show Firing Line that really explains good from a congressman who's on the front lines trying to solve this issue. So we'll look at some of those highlights. But before we do that, I want to welcome any first timers we have to class. Anybody a first time visitor? Nice to have you. Welcome. I'm Steve. I'm the leader of the class, and we're glad to have you here. Zoomers, welcome Zoomers. Please mute yourself in the lower left corner of your screen. Hi, Susan. You can hear me okay? Good. And hi, Toby and Doug. And we are recording this on YouTube for future playback for those who can't be here today that enjoy watching. We are glad to be able to do that. Other announcements. Want to ask Jean and Mary how it was at the gun legislation day that you went to this week, because we have had a presentation last Sunday on gun violence prevention. Can you tell us just for a minute, Jean, about how it was?
Well, we
what you
quite a
did?
person here in this Laura Reeves, member of this church. Those of us who heard her last week talking about passion in the sermon today. Talk about passion. What Ron was talking about. She knows the legislature. She knows how to work the legislature. She'd be a wonderful person to come in sometime. How you go about it. She took special interest in us and others. And we did meet with legislators. We were energized by students demand action. Some from Douglas County, the various counties. When you have the students around, Ron, as you were just talking, younger students, you really feel, if you need to feel any more necessity in doing what she's trying to do and trying to do here in counties and in the state. The legislators are very receptive, contrary to what you might think, to meet with them and talk with them and show that you're generally interested and supportive of some of the progressive legislation that's being advanced. Bottom line, the one on training, how to use our firearms, a lot of accidents, etc., so forth. That hearing will be on the 15th. The legislation that talks about having to be insured, like you have car insurance, you have insurance on your home, etc., stands a reasonably good chance. I say reasonably because insurance companies benefit. Therefore, you've got that support. There are numerous bills, and one of the legislators told us, right, Mary, that because you have different persons and entities doing this, that it gets confusing for some of the legislators to find confluence or commonalities. In other words, synthesizing, focusing, and so forth, because of the number of bills that are out there. But I would say, all in all, Steve, this is something we should be proud of here at St. Andrews, to having someone like Laura Reeves with the passion and the energy and the expertise, but the receptivity by legislators. Don't underestimate. For those of you who've done this sort of thing, don't underestimate the influence of showing up at the Capitol building has when they sense live people, and particularly when they're your legislators and representatives, to hear from you. Don't minimize that. It was a welcome surprise, wasn't it, Mary? Did you want to add anything more?
Well,
That's it.
yes, that there are 8 bills up for voting, so that's kind of bad, I guess. Too many different bills.
Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for being there. Yes, very good. Okay. Any other announcements? Things going on? I want to welcome back the Dutters from, where were you in the world, Dutters?
The other half.
Morocco.
And there's Norma. You were in Morocco and you rode camels and.
We did. Hot air
Those
balloon.
kind of things.
Went to Rick's Cafe in
Went
Casablanca.
to Rick's Cafe.
They didn't get rounded up with the usual suspects.
Great. Well, welcome back.
And I had no idea I was gonna be on the big screen today.
Never know when they might catch you. Yes, and
38, if you're in that area, they're having a town hall meeting at Cobo Library at 5 o'clock. Cobo is located at Orchard and Holly, and it's going to be David Ortega, if you know him from the state house, and the state senate guy will be there too.
Chris Colker, David Ortiz, and
Or
then the
David
new
Ortiz, I think.
representative for HT 38.
But, you know, we need to be there, and you can make a difference by showing up. I've found in the past, it really makes a difference, and if you want to make a difference, do it at the state or even your local city council, because you can really make a difference, and don't worry so much about Washington, because sometimes you can't, changes happen really slow there, but you can make changes in your own backyard first.
very good. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's jump into this. I'll do my best to present the basics so we don't get too confused. It's such a complex issue. And I want to say right up front that I love immigrants. I am the ancestor of immigrants from one side from Sweden. My grandmother came from Sweden, and my other side, my father's side, came from Czechoslovakia. All came through Ellis Island. And somebody in Ellis Island, when my grandfather came through there, he said, last name is Baska. And they said, oh, B-A-S-K-A, and they just put a K.
Oh.
And it was originally a C. So one of the clerks there changed my whole last name. Power of the US government in immigration right there.
Well, if
So-
you remember Rev Mark's sermon, or series, A House Divided,
Mhm.
unless we're Native American, we're all immigrants.
All immigrants. That is right. So why is it a hot topic now with Biden and Trump at the border this week? Because the highest number of border crossings in history has been happening just in the last few months. To give a little comparison, President Obama's Homeland Security chief said that during their years, they thought it was bad if apprehensions exceeded 1,000 a day at the border. That they would be overwhelmed. The current process, the system would be overwhelmed if there was more than 1,000. Over the past 3 years, the daily average has been 6,900. Entering 2024, the apprehensions have now in the last couple of months been 12,000. There are so few Border Patrol agents and judges to deal with the system that there are wide open spaces where people are just coming through with no fencing, no nothing to stop them. And it is an amazing new reality we will hear from a congressman from Texas here. And I'm going to present both sides. I want to be fair to both sides, those who think that we should be letting in extremely large numbers and those who think we should be more tightly focused. In addition to the 12,000 that are coming in daily, the reality is even more when you consider the number of called gotaways, the people who come through and are not stopped and apprehended. This is according to the Center for Immigration Studies. The Border Patrol estimates the number of those who have got away, but does not make it public. But the estimate that has been given occasionally by the Border Patrol is 2 million, bringing the 3-year total of illegal immigrants to 10 million, equaling the number equivalent of London or Greater Chicago. These are numbers. Where are these people coming from? There are 45% come from 170 countries outside of Mexico and Central America. It's much wider than we think. The stories have come to light much more aggressively the last few weeks because of the migrants being sent to Denver. For example, we've had 40,000 migrants arrive in Denver and spent $58 million so far. As you know, and probably seen, the Denver mayor has said he's had to reduce the Denver budget by 10% and going up to accommodate what's necessary to house these. The New York mayor has also said he's so frustrated because he cannot get a meeting with the White House on this. President Biden has not given a meeting with the New York mayor or the Chicago mayor. And this is turning people against Biden. In fact, Mitt Romney, who many of us know is a moderate Republican, said that he's no fan of President Trump's handling of the border. He said, but President Biden has been embarrassingly bad in how he's handled immigration. He's made extreme mistakes and not been communicative on this issue. So that is a moderate Republican's opinion. I would like to show you, just as I try to understand this issue, where it's coming from, a quick illustration that I did myself. This is not fancy, but I want to just run through it to give you a basic understanding as I have studied it over the last 2 weeks. On the left side is Latin America, people fleeing Latin America primarily, but other countries also, to escape poverty and violence. The cartels, the criminal gangs, are the ones that are recruiting people from there and charging them thousands of dollars per person.
Steve, can you put it on the Zoom?
Yes, thank you. Didn't hit share. I need to hit share screen on there. Thank you. Okay, this is just to give us a little visual representation. I'm a visual learner. There, Toby, now you can see it. Latin America, where the majority are coming from, they're fleeing poverty and violence. Cartels, criminal gangs are making the most money they ever have, more than their drug operations. It's reported now in human trafficking through to the US. The cartels are telling people there are jobs in America and benefits to be had, and the border is wide open. That people will be caught at the border, but then they will be released into America and not followed up. That's the message from the cartels. So then these thousands of people are gathering in migrant caravans and coming through Mexico, where there's no stopping, no policy in Mexico to stop. And then in Mexico, more people are joining these caravans because of tourist visas. Mexico is giving out more tourist visas than it has because people come there with the intention declared to be a tourist from China and Africa, but they are joining these caravans and coming across into America without being checked. And so we'll hear the congressman say that in a minute too. I didn't realize that this was another avenue. So Congress is trying to get Mexico to cooperate by stopping the tourist visas, which they know people are just getting to, some people to come and join, to come into America. So then when the migrants come across the Rio Grande River into Texas, Arizona, and California, some of them are caught and some are not. And of those that are caught, then the process basically now is that they are captured, they are processed at detention centers, their information taken. They are then released with a court date that is average of 3 years before they are to come back and try to apply for asylum. Asylum refers to American policy of taking people who are in religious and political persecution, but not fleeing poverty or violence. And so that's why most 9 out of 10 do not qualify for an asylum, which allows it to get in quicker and easier because they're not fleeing religious or political persecution. So the Biden administration has sent back 4 million so far of the people that it's caught, but that's only a small fraction of those that are there. The bottom line is there's not enough border agents, judges, fencing, and no pathway to citizenship so far. And those need congressional funding and policy making. And we know we've heard just in the last 2 weeks that Senate bill that was drafted by Republicans and Democrats had a lot of money and policy changes in it, but it was rejected by the House Republicans. And so the problem, the really basic problem, is that politicians are using this crisis for political gain. Not only Trump directing them to hold off on passing any bill, but individual congressmen are saying in private, we don't want to solve this until we get back the White House and are in power and can claim the credit for solving this on our own. That's the bottom line that I have understood. Okay, I want to stop there for any questions or comments, if you agree or disagree, and then I want to show you some clips from this PBS firing line that are very eye-opening. Yes, Ann.
One big problem in the Denver Public Schools is that just around 2,000 of these immigrant kids came after the October count. There is a day in October where the count is done for the state legislature to fund the schools. Most of school funding comes from the state, not the federal government. And there's schools that don't even have enough markers, whiteboards. There is a teacher that went from 15 in a bilingual class. Now she has 31 in a kindergarten class with no help. And Denver is really taking the brunt of, all the extra kids especially, and then not getting the money for them. They are really hurting. They need bilingual teachers. If you know of anybody, as a bilingual teacher, tell them to, they can get a job in Denver. And Denver is a great district. Our daughters went there.
Okay. Yes.
These immigrants that are caught and there's 3 years till their court dates, what happens to them in the interim?
3 years.
For that 3 years?
They
Are here, are they sent
They
back?
are released into America. No, they are not sent back. Most of them are released into America. That's where we've had them being put on the buses and going to Denver, Chicago, and New York City.
Okay.
Excuse me, what if they're have a criminal record?
That is the problem. There's no effective way to do a background search for criminal records on many of these that are coming through. They said that 330 have been identified on the terror watch list. So the FBI has identified at least that many that are suspected terrorists, not just regular criminals, but terrorists
Why don't
also.
they apprehend them when they know that?
Those they do apprehend and send back.
Terrorists.
Biden has done 4 million send back. Jim.
I don't know why, but every time I hear about the immigration crisis that's going on, my mind works kind of funny, and I go back to this old story that I'm sure most of you have all heard about the difference between justice and charity. And the story is that there were 2 guys camped along the side of a river, and they were looking out at the river, and all of a sudden they saw a baby floating down. And one of the guys saw, oh my God, this is just awful. And he kicked off his shoes and dove in and swam out at risk of his own life and grabbed the baby and swam into the ice cold water and brought the baby in, and they wrapped the baby up and got him Then all of a sudden they looked out and there was another baby, and the same guy jumped in and he went, and they kept on going. I guess, and all of a sudden the other guy said, I think I'll go upstream and climb over the rocks and fight the wild animals and exhaust myself to find out who in the world is throwing these babies in the water. The guy jumping in the water out there and rescuing the babies, it's absolutely necessary to do that. But he was doing charity. The guy that's going upstream and solving the problem
Stopping at the source.
is doing justice. I don't hear, when we hear, I don't know, maybe I'm just not hearing it, but I don't hear anybody solving the problem about what's on the left side of the river, what's on the other side of the river. Why are all these people coming here, and why don't we work on solving that problem?
Yes, we'll talk about that before we're done here, yes. Christine, and then I'll go to the video.
And just going along with that point, you mentioned both sides. It's not really both sides, it's multiple sides. So it's not, don't let anybody in or let everybody in.
Right.
It's so complex, as you're gonna talk about, I'm sure. There are so many different things that we have to deal with. The Jim, that mentioned, get the source and also deal with, getting more people. There's so many things. So when we think about immigration, we shouldn't think of anti or for. It's just far more complicated.
Good point. Okay, Ron, and then I'll go to the video.
Steve, how many military age Chinese men are in the United States today?
I don't know, do you know?
Neither does the United States government. I was doing some scribbling on a notepad, and I think there's well over a division in the number of Chinese young men of military age in the United States now.
Okay, we know China has a history of wanting to become involved everywhere.
They already have their uniforms.
Okay, all right, I want to play for you just a few clips briefly of this Texas congressman who is a Republican representing 800 miles of the border. But this young fella is a very moderate Republican, an Iraq vet who favors gun control, same-sex marriage rights, and has been censured by the Republican Party for not going along with many of their stands. And so he is a leader in trying to fix this in Congress. And so listen to some of these surprising things that he says. I want to make sure I've got this set for
What's his name?
my folks to do it. Tony Gonzalez. Let me test it for a second here.
Yes.
You spend an enormous.
Toby, can you hear that? You can hear the audio. Okay. This is from the show called Firing Line on PBS, Friday nights at 7 o'clock. The host is Margaret Hoover, who is the granddaughter of Herbert Hoover, the president. Good show. We recommend it to you to watch.
Amount of time on the border, handling the border crisis.
Mm-hmm.
What are you seeing?
I have seen this crisis go from bad to worse, and it's tragic in so many ways. And while the crisis may start in Eagle Pass or Del Rio or El Paso, it doesn't end there. And we're seeing that exactly happen now, where it's going to New York City and Chicago and Denver, and there is no end in sight. So I worry this is what year 3 looks like. What does year 4, 5, 6 look like if we don't tackle this?
You have brought more than 100 lawmakers down to the border, Republicans and Democrats. Why is it important, in your view, for them to see the border and the crisis with their own eyes?
Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I've tried everything. I've hosted 22 different congressional delegations and nearly 200 members now. Just last week, I hosted Speaker Johnson and 63 of my colleagues. So out of these nearly 200 people, most of them have been Republicans. There's only been 4 Democrats that have taken me up on it. But I want them to see it unfiltered, untapped, unspun as best as possible. I won't put you in a spot that's going to hurt you politically. I just want you to hear from the mayors, the judges, the first responders, the ranchers, the people that live there. They will tell you the story. And regardless of what their politics are, it is all the same. It's absolutely gut wrenching, some of these stories and some of the daily turmoil that they have to deal with.
What kinds of things are you seeing?
Thanksgiving weekend, there were 14 migrants that drowned that weekend. So it's absolutely, I've seen this number go from 1 a month to 1 a week, and now 14 in a weekend.
The number of people dying as they cross the border.
The number of people dying, exactly. And they don't realize that water is very swift. And did they get to this point? And I always think, like, what about them? They're not going to qualify. 9 out of 10 people will not qualify for asylum because they're not fleeing religious or political persecution. They're fleeing economic persecution. So what we're doing is we're sending them down a dead-end route.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection has encountered more than 300,000 migrants near the southern border in the last month. That's twice the amount seen in the worst month of the Trump administration.
Yes.
What, Representative Gonzalez, do you think is causing the surge now?
Yeah, it's very easy. Words mean nothing. It's all about actions. I mean, December is normally a month, historically has been a month where the numbers go down and you see 300,000 people coming over. I think back to December 20th. December 20th, I'm in Eagle Pass. There's 6,000 people under the bridge. I visited the Firefly facility, the soft-sided facility there in Eagle Pass. It can house a little over 1,000 people. That day, there were 6,000 people in there. I've been there 24 times. I'd never seen it in that porous a condition. Border Patrol was processing 4,000 people a day. This is a astronomical number, and it still wasn't enough. There was no end in sight.
What's causing it now?
2 things. One is everything is controlled by the criminal organizations on the other side. They're pulling the levers. They're the ones controlling where the traffic is going. You want to get to the root cause? The root cause of this crisis is the cartels. The cartels determine all of it. And this is where we have to put pressure on them. And the other piece of it too, the Biden administration may be saying some of the right things, but they're not doing some of the right things. And until they start doing some of the right things, this crisis is only going to continue to boil up.
What about the 4 million that President Biden's administration has deported, expelled, sent back to their home countries?
This is where the devil's in the details. So let's say someone has traveled from Venezuela, okay, and they've made a dangerous trek to Texas, and the Biden administration sends them back to Mexico. If you send them 10 miles away when they've already made thousands of miles trek, they're only going to try again and again and again. They're not going to go, oh, well, I made it this far, time to give up. You have to send them back to their country of origin.
In 2023, so last year, a majority of the migrants that were encountered at the southern border came from countries beyond what we have previously seen, Mexico and Central America. There are growing numbers of migrants crossing the southern border from China.
Yes.
And from India. How does what you're seeing now compare to previous surges?
It's unlike anything before. And anyone in the national security space or border security space or has lived along the border will tell you the exact same thing. It has never been in this manner before. I visited Mexico City several months back, and I sat with President López Obrador. And I asked him for one thing in particular. I said, look, all these people from all over the country are getting humanitarian and tourist visas through Mexico, from China, from Africa, from Europe, from all these places to come visit Mexico City. They are not there to see the pyramids. They are there to legally transit through Mexico to get to the United States, and then they dump all that documentation and then they enter our country illegally. These are some of the tangible things that I've asked, cut back on some of these visas, because that is a pull factor that's allowing people from all over the world to get here.
You spend a lot of time discussing the dynamics of this problem with all of the constituents.
Is blinking red. I mean, he is jumping up and down and going, hey, look, if we don't do something about it, something bad is going to happen.
You have spent enough time at the border that you actually think this is a problem that is eminently solvable were it not for the politics. So if we were just to divorce politics from the solutions, Just in plain terms, what does it take to fix the problem?
I mean, it's pretty simple to fix it. I can give you the list of ideas that have been proven to work, but it's pretty simple. The secret sauce to solving this problem is political courage. We need political courage at all levels to be able to go, you know what, enough is enough.
I've heard you use a formulation that suggests you need some infrastructure, like a wall. You need some manpower, like more human resources
Sure.
at the border, and that you need technology,
That's it.
and that this is a solvable problem.
Yes.
Is it really that simple?
It is. It depends on, you know, the infrastructure. You can't put infrastructure in West Texas when it's wide open and there's this beautiful area there.
There are
right?
some
I mean,
places that a wall just won't,
doesn't make
doesn't
sense.
work.
But there's other places that it absolutely does make sense. And then the technology piece, that's where you fill in a lot of the gaps. Where
Why hasn't that worked in the past?
why hasn't it worked?
There have been some real failures.
Yeah,
along.
it's because, you know, they throw a little bit of money and then they walk away, and, you know, there's 10 different programs doing the same thing instead of layering it and building upon it. And then the other piece of it too is immigration judges. This is America, right? I don't envision just rounding people up and, you know, this is America. You get your day in court, but if you do not qualify for asylum, it shouldn't take you 7 years.
To be
It should take you
adjudicated.
days, right? If you qualify, great. You know, we want to be that warm, welcoming country that we've always been. But if you do not qualify, you get sent back to your country of origin.
You've advocated for ending catch and release, increasing deportations, designating cartels as terrorist organizations, bolstering the funding for Border Patrol and ICE operations. And you've introduced bills addressing fentanyl distribution, asylum standards, work visas. If you could wave a magic wand and just get one of those passed, what to you would be the most important?
I think it's the deportation flights, because this is what I saw in Del Rio. If you remember the Haitians under the bridge in Del Rio, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, thousands of Haitians under a bridge, and then all of a sudden it went away.
What happened?
And so what happened is they started to send Haitians back to Haiti. They increased the number of ICE flights, and immediately once they started doing that, it stopped. Many of these Haitians are going, wait a second here, I don't even live in Haiti anymore. I'm really from, you know, Chile. Too bad, buddy. You told me you're from Haiti. You're going back to Haiti. So as soon as the word got out on that, I mean, it immediately stopped. So if
So
there was
there's a deterrence factor that was
deterrence.
effective, is what you're saying.
Yes, it doesn't even take that much either. You just start enforcing that law, and you start deporting people that, once again, that do not qualify for asylum, that are here in the country illegally. You start doing that, the word spreads like wildfire, and the spigot is immediately turned off.
Do you sense that in your conference in the House of Representatives, you have colleagues who are sincere in their interest to pass an immigration reform, any kind of immigration reform bill in this upcoming supplemental negotiation?
I do. I've also, 3 years now tackling this issue. I have quickly found there are not that many genuine actors that want to see this problem get solved, because it is very lucrative politically to just, blame one another for everything that's wrong. And it's all fun and games when it's somebody else's district or somebody else's state. But what has happened is now it's in their backyard and it is their state, and they're hearing from parents that lost children to fentanyl, and they're seeing these influx of migrants come over and consume their city resources. So I am seeing a growing number of colleagues on both sides of the aisle that are starting to go, hey, Tony, talk to me a little bit about your plan on how we fix this.
The House Republicans have.
Stop there. What a comment to make. Not many people in Congress are that interested in fixing it, he said. Yes. What are your thoughts on that? Did you learn some new things from that? Yes, Christine.
Have you done any research or anyone else? What can the president do? Let's say the Congress doesn't want to do anything. Within the presidential powers, are you aware of what he could do? Because I know people are talking about him doing something, but what's within his power to do, to override the Congress and do something?
Executive order.
Yeah, let me read you some highlights from that. We were going to get to that really quick. So thank you, Christine. Associated Press story from a couple weeks ago. What are the answers? Some people say that Biden can solve the issue right now with executive powers. He could reinstate the Trump era immigration policies or simply shut down the border. The truth is, without changes from Congress and more funding, not much can be additionally done by Biden. Immigration lawyer with the Migration Policy Institute said President Biden needs Congress to act. This is the simplest way to put it. That's why it was imperative that Congress try to pass that Senate bill that was just done. Immigration officials do not have the expanded detention capacity needed unless they get more funding. More immigration lawyers are quoted in this as saying that some of the things that Trump did, such as using Title 42 policy, cannot be used anymore because courts have ruled against it. Title 42 was a policy that allowed border agents to send away people based on health concerns during the pandemic. When the pandemic was over, the courts reversed and said Title 42 can no longer be used. So the immigration attorneys are saying it's not as simple for Biden to simply pass executive actions. He needs Congress to act.
Yeah, let me amplify on that. A president can often issue an executive order, but if it's found by a federal judge to be illegal within a few weeks, you've played your card for 2 weeks and then that's it. So it doesn't solve it if your executive order is outside the bounds of what federal law will allow.
So it's not, that's what all the stories are saying. It's not as simple as that. And Biden's not explaining that clearly. That's why he's getting so much criticism. He's not out saying until this week, this is a real crisis. We want to do more. I can't really do more. He's not explaining it because he's not a good communicator. And that's a sad situation for a crisis and a president that needs to do more to solve it. More thoughts? Yes, Grant, go right ahead.
I'm just curious as to why why we don't have a wall completely built, and what is the argument against a wall?
We heard part of that from Gonzalez. He said a wall makes sense in certain segments, but it's pretty much impossible to have a wall go over 800 miles because they get a taller ladder or a better cutting instrument to get through.
Tunneling.
Yeah, there's also other ways to get by a wall. So a wall has some use in some places, but it's not going to stop it. We need a whole spectrum of policies and methods to set up a defensive barrier.
Do you have any numbers about the people that are actually presenting at a border entrance, not coming across in a place where it's not an entrance, and actually seeking asylum, either through the new app that I think the Biden administration has started to utilize so that they can make an appointment to actually come and present their case for credible fear versus ones that are crossing in between border openings.
You're asking how many there are?
Percentage wise.
Percentage wise.
It seems to me that most are coming across at a legal entrance rather
Yes.
than presenting at that.
Yes, I don't have it in front of me, but I think I read it was like 20% of those coming through are coming through the approved border crossings. Yes, so that's why at the moment, it's as much as 80% that are coming through the non-places. Yes, Ann?
Does anybody know why it takes so long to get a green card? Because these immigrants that are coming want to work, but they can't for several years. And we've got jobs for them and jobs that Anglos do not want to do.
Well, with the numbers of people coming over, there's probably not enough people to work and process.
Yeah,
You know?
but they should, they want to work. They don't want to just get handouts. There's been more reports, especially in the Denver area. They want to work.
But there's,
They can't get their green card.
yeah, but people have to do the paperwork, you know, and there's probably not enough people to do all that paperwork. It's just a.
Well,
How many
nobody
are there?
sits down on the paperwork, they just let them work.
A related issue is in this weekend's Wall Street Journal that says one of the neglected issues that's a pull factor into America for a lot of these are the jobs. That they come, they get jobs. There are plenty of low-wage jobs for them. They write back and tell people in their countries that they do have employment. And then that pulls more immigrants here. And that part of the problem is that the government is not enforcing with employers the anti-illegal alien employment laws. So good explanation there for that too. So there are push and pull factors, they keep saying. People are being pushed out of their countries because of the violence and the poverty, and pulled here because it's easy to come and easy to get jobs and stay without being deported.
In reference to what you just said, there's a new book out by a journalist, New York Times, called Everyone Who Is Gone Is Here. Everyone Who Is Gone Is Here by Jonathan Blitzer, Blitzer. Not that we caused the problem, but we helped it germinate. Many of the people coming now are from Central America and Venezuela. And it's our foreign policy in the past, this is Blitzer's thesis here. It's our foreign policy in cozying up to the dictators, which germinated the poverty, the violence, the desperation, the thrust towards America. So in a sense, not that we sowed wild seeds and inherited the wild grapes, I got that confused. The fact is that we have contributed to this problem. Now we're having to mop up the mess. That doesn't solve the problem, but it does explain. It's not just entirely their fault. We have contributed, unfortunately, to the problem in the past.
By supporting dictatorships
Yeah.
and instead of democracy.
The chickens have
will
come home to
improve.
roost, I guess.
And that goes to Jim's question or statement too, about what do we do to stop the root cause of this? How do you improve the standard of living in the Latin American countries like Venezuela, where the economy's just collapsed and people are being driven out of there by the violence and the lack of jobs and everything. And so there have been stories that have said Vice President Harris has been to those countries, but they've been largely just symbolic visits. We don't do much to try and improve those countries. And what can we do to raise an entire country standard of living? What really can we do? Alice?
Okay, a few years ago, I worked at Country Dinner Playhouse and did their HR. And there was a Mexican immigrant there who I ran all his information, social security number, his work number, his papers and everything cleared. Went through a government website, I did this. A couple years later, he comes to me, says, I'm legal now.
Okay.
So, it's like, there was definitely a glitch there. Where he got the old documents from, I have no idea. What we ended up doing was, he was a wonderful employee. We terminated him as the old employee and rehired him as a new employee.
Okay.
He was a great employee but somewhere there was a gap between the government's, how they were handling this and where this kid, he was probably 35, where he got his documentation from to do this. And it always comes to mind that, now this is a few years ago, so hopefully they've corrected those problems, but I have no confidence that they have.
All the stories say the immigration system, judges and processing is underfunded, understaffed, and there's no political will to fix it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Norley.
I'm also interested in the cartel factor here? Because that seemed to be in our video clip, a very large portion of the cause of the immigration crisis. So I'd love to know what people think might be an option for addressing that. I mean, if that is a large portion of why we're facing this crisis, what can we do? You know, you feel really powerless.
You talked about designating them terrorists.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there have been stories saying the US government has tried to put sanctions on Mexico and on our trade and other things to try and force Mexico to clamp down on the cartels more. But there still is so much corruption in Mexico that and lack of will to take on the cartels, which are nearly as powerful and armed as the Mexican military.
It's like the mafia or something.
Yes, super mafia groups. Yes,
I
Mary.
was just wondering, when an immigrant comes before a judge, how does he or she have to prove that they're a victim of political or religious persecution? Or how would they prove that? Couldn't they just tell a lie?
Yeah, but then that many stories on exactly what happens there.
Scars.
That's true. I want to take a second and give our Zoomers a chance to ask a question or make a comment. Susan, how about Canada? I have read that Canada has recently passed laws tightening their immigration policies.
Right, I was gonna make that comment. Just this last week, we decided that anybody coming from Mexico has to have a visa, and that's a huge departure for us. But I think it speaks to the risks that were described earlier, because people are using that vehicle to come south to north and then south to the United States.
Yes, so for those who don't know, Susan is in Toronto, Ontario. Very good, thank you. Stephanie. I see Steph and Doug have their hands up.
Hi, Steve. Thank you, though. I just truly want to thank you for trying to dissect this huge problem and give us some clarity. I have two comments, please, sir. I'm a little confused about why both parties think they can manipulate this issue into a political gain for them. Help me follow that through. And number two, one of our news sources is talking about all the drugs that are coming over from the border and continuously saying that that's the point of entry for all these drugs, when I've read other news sources that these drugs are coming in by Americans through legal points of entry in greater quantity.
Good questions, Steph. My quick answer to the first one would be each of the parties wants to take credit for solving this now that it's been raised to a high crisis level. So the Republicans want to hold off until they're back in the White House, and the Democrats wanted to push it now because it's an election year. They want to take credit for solving it now while they can. I haven't heard any more about except that fentanyl coming across the border has been increased 400% in the last 2 years. So there is some truth to that, much of it coming across illegal border entries, but I don't know how much legal also.
Yeah, they don't seem to report on that. Steve, is there any
Louder.
Steve, is there anything that you've read as to why Biden for so long didn't address it when he had the chance to make it a big coup for his term?
What I've read, Stephanie, is that it was seen as a negative issue for Democrats to take on at all because they weren't getting much traction on it. So they didn't want to raise it to a high visibility level. until we were forced to in the last 6 months. It was seen as a losing issue for the Democrats to focus on.
Okay.
But
Then
it's
they-
all- Go ahead.
I just Googled, can Biden make an executive action in immigration? And Google said absolutely not. He did not have the power to do that. So,
Great lawyers are saying that one of the big myths is that he can just do executive orders and stop this. And because of the laws and court decisions, it would not be possible today. That's what I've read. Thank you, Steph. Jim, did you have a comment?
Well, I just wanted to call attention to the fact that you also passed out this 10 Bible verses on helping the stranger. And I think those were of great importance to all of us in this room. As a matter of fact, I think they're important to all of us in this country. And as I'm reading these things, I can't help but remember that in the last 2 or 3 weeks, part of the news that is going on are that the cities, the smaller cities all around Colorado, Aurora, Lakewood, some of the other cities, Colorado Springs, are declaring themselves to be not sanctuary cities. That we will not help in any way, any of the strangers, any of the people coming across. We will not help them. Don't send them here. Send them somewhere else. Let them suffer somewhere else, not here.
Because they say they don't have the money and they can't deal with it.
Well,
Yes.
Douglas County is also a non-sanctuary place.
Douglas County
I
also.
just heard it this week from an under sheriff.
Mhm. Thank you. Well, we have about 7, 8 minutes left. And I wanted to get into that. What do you think Jesus would say about this today? Even in Leviticus, the Old Testament, it says, when a stranger sojourns into your land, you shall not do him wrong. Treat the stranger as you would a native among you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was reading these 10 Bible verses on helping the stranger, and let's just say we had 10 immigrants who showed up on the front door and they wanted to stay in your house. Now, a lot of people would say, yeah, let's let them live in our cities. But if these people showed up at their front door, you wouldn't let them in. You wouldn't let them live with you. I think Jesus would let them live. So there's what I see really is a lot of hypocrisy. A lot of people say, well, yeah, we can't just get rid of these people. We got to let them into our city. But if they showed up on your front door, would you do what Jesus would do and let them live in your house? And I'd probably say most would not. So there's a hypocrisy element to all this.
There's something in there though about if 10 people show up at your door, you may not have the resources. And so when we're asking for more resources to deal with it, that's one of the things upstream that Jim was talking about.
But we're all gonna have to sacrifice something.
But can we take
But not
everybody?
in the back door.
I think the US needs to welcome people, but there has to be a limit. We can't afford it. It's, all these people coming in, they're gonna bring poverty and what have you, crying with them perhaps. Yes, we need to welcome some, absolutely. But I don't know if we can afford to welcome, 12,000 a day. We don't have the.
Yes. Another reason why some say the Democrats have been more lenient letting people in is because Americans' population is not replenishing, the birth rate is low, not replenishing at a rate to keep our population at 350 million. So, and a lot of Americans don't want to take those lowest level jobs. And so the Democrats recognize that and say it's all right to let in large numbers of millions of immigrants to fill those voids. But of course, the other side is, can we afford to let everybody in the world come? Would it bankrupt our nation? Would that be what Jesus would want, to let everybody come in with no condition at all? Jim?
Two comments. One is I think people conflate immigrant with asylee. Asylees and immigrants are not the same thing.
Good point.
Second thing, look internationally at immigration in Africa, in Europe, in Asia. Immigration is a worldwide problem. We say it's all about the Mexican border. That's overly simplistic, but we're also a nation that likes to watch 15-minute news clips.
Yes, and the reports have said the immigration is up all around the world. Some countries like Germany have taken so many, they just said, we cannot take any more when they have closed their borders, at least sometime periodically. Yes,
I
Colleen.
think Jesus in his holy anger would say, Congress, pass the bill.
You would be turning over the tables. Yes, Jim.
I've always thought, people that want to come here should have a sponsor.
Have a sponsor.
Yeah.
They used to have
They
to.
did, yes.
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
Uh-huh.
And the sponsor could be an individual, many persons, or an organization.
Mhm.
And silence do need a sponsor.
Yes, yes, and
Denver has tried to get more money from the federal government. They haven't been able to. So several weeks ago, 15% of their budget was cut at rec centers and also motor vehicle. No flowers are going to be planted in any of the parks. Then they went to the next step, all across the board. Everybody has to cut 15%. This means that rec centers won't be open in the inner city as much as they are for activities in the summertime for inner city kids. They will have no place to go. On hot days too, the rec centers are closed, no air conditioning.
couple more comments, then Ron's gonna tell us a little about migrants' impact on the economy. So,
Yeah.
Kathy, Go get Kathy first.
Well, I was just gonna add a resource that I stumbled onto after reading, Tim Alberta's book on, the Kingdom of Power and the Glory. He interviews 3 people who are, approaching political issues from evangelical perspective. So maybe, and it's the Good Faith podcast with Curtis Chang. And he did 2 interviews in December that were very, very interesting, that I would encourage you to look up.
Okay, what's the name of that again?
It's Good Faith
Good Faith Podcast?
with Curtis Chang.
Okay, thank you. We will do that. Okay, a lot of pros and cons on whether immigrants are good for the economy or hurt the economy. Ron?
Yeah, Thursday paper, Denver Post. There was an article that was taken from the New York Times. But in an interesting statistic, foreign born, it doesn't say, foreign born now make up 18.6% of the labor force in the United States. And if you don't believe it, look at all the roofs that have been replaced here at Highlands Ranch. Show me one of them that was put on by a predominantly white guy, construction team. Another thing, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office projects that over the next 10 years, immigration will keep the number of working Americans from sinking. That means just to hold the number of Americans in the labor force working steady, we have to have some level of immigration. And when people say, I hate inflation, but a lot of the low wage immigrants are filling jobs that are keeping inflation and prices down. So it's a real complex one. One church member told me, yeah, we need Rev Mark to give a sermon on making whoopee. To get the population internally.
Well, look at the age we're.
That's passion.
All right,
Moving right along.
moving right along.
Just amazing the complex angles to and parts of this issue. So many parts. Okay, we're about out of time, but Jim, go
I
ahead.
wanted to segue off this last comment. Look at any of your artificial intelligence things. I look at Lightroom that I use quite a lot. Look at the list of authors. We think about immigrants doing burger flipping. This is where we're getting our high level technical expertise is not coming out of America.
Yeah.
So I think that's a part of immigration that is often overlooked. And I think-
anecdotal evidence of that.
Well,
These
some of these aren't here illegal either, it's the immigrants.
We were treated to a home visit where a 19-year-old college student came from college to help his mom talk to us in English. But he is studying artificial intelligence, very bright guy. And when his mother went to the kitchen, he whispered to us, "Don't tell her, but I'm a hacker."
Well, thank you for all your stories and your comments and your questions. What a good issue. We will try and find an immigration attorney to come in and give us a real perspective from that angle, and he can answer our questions more specifically.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Really good. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
That one is-